What's up, everybody out there in fantasy football land? I'm Jorge Edwards, and welcome to the Four-Eyed Pregame Show. Before I introduce everybody, just want to, let everybody know this is a very special weekend for a lot of people. Special in that we're, giving our thoughts and prayers to those who suffered the effects of losing loved ones and friends in September 11th, 20 years ago. It's crazy to think that's just 20 years ago. Feels like it's not too long ago. Everybody here at Fantasy and Frames, our thoughts and prayers are with you. I think that's really all that really needs to be said, to be honest with you. We are there with you in thoughts and prayers. And with that, let's get into week 1 of the fantasy football season. We are here. We're here to answer your questions. We're here to answer questions that we have for each other. I don't know if you all can see Tyler's shirt down there, but he is definitely repping the Browns. And, of course, Nate Markham is, of course, always repping the Chiefs. So we have we got the Packers, and I am being accompanied by a man wearing multiple logos because we have multiple logos on screen. And this is what basically this is all about, folks. Everything you're watching, everything you're listening to, everything you're reading at Fantasy and Frames, which, by the way, I posted everything that we did this week, including recently we just finished up our IDP matchups of the week, so check that out. But everything is basically for this. This is why you're playing. Maybe some cash on the side. But if your league has a trophy, this is what you're doing. This is what you're playing for. This is where the fun comes from. This is where you brag for a year that you endured everything, all the trials and tribulations that go on during a fantasy football season. You are playing for this. And so we are here to help you get there. And we're going to, like I said yesterday on Twitter, for those of you who may or may not know, we're going to be answering start-sit questions. We're going to give you our top 5 options at every position outside the top 25. So we're going to make it a little bit more interesting for those who have flex options or multiple flex options as far as who to pick. And, of course, we're going to be doing that on offense and IDP. And, of course, we're partnering with Monkey Knife Fight this year. So we're going to be going over some of their prop bets, just talking about the fantasy point prop bets. And give you our thoughts on who's going to score more or less. And, as the promo code is scrolling across the screen, promo code FRAMES, receive up to 100% deposit up to $100 over at monkeyknifefight.com when you sign up using the promo code FRAMES. All right, so as I'm tweeting this out, let's start with some start and sit questions. Jonathan, let's just get this out of the way. Last year, I always ask you the same question. And, this year, I don't see any reason why to stop. This week, against the Chicago Bears, are you starting Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods? If you had the choice.
It's nice to be back, isn't it? So I'm going to give the answer that I pretty much gave every single week last year, which is they are both a good option. I'd kind of like to echo what Nate said in the NFC West preview. I thought Nate sort of hit the nail on the head when he's saying about how Cooper Kupp's the sort of higher upside option and Woods is a sort of safer floor option. I was having a look earlier today and saw that the Rams only threw something like 20 touchdowns last year, which was the 7th fewest in the league. I think that'll increase with Stafford, and I think that's primarily going to help Kupp. So I like them both, but I think Kupp is the one that I'm really interested in this year.
Nate, what about you? Are you a Kupp? Are you standing by with what you said with the article? Has anything changed since you wrote the NFC West offense preview article?
Oh, that was in the podcast.
Excuse me, the podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Nothing changed on my. Like that was pre Cam Akers situation too. So if anything, I think both of their ceilings have risen just a little bit more. I can't see Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson taking on a heavier workload. So I think that they're going to lean a little bit more on Stafford. And if that's the case, I mean, they already threw to the wide receiver position, 66% of the time last year. So it's not like that's going to I mean, there's not much more room to go, but you can get close to that 70, 72%, something like that, top 2 or 3 overall. And if that's the case, then both are already top 20, but I think both could, kind of hover around that wide receiver 1 rank by the end of the season.
Yeah, and Kupp only had something like 3 touchdowns last season. He had 10 the year before. So I think there'll be some, he'll probably get closer back to his average this year. And with Stafford there instead of Goff, I think naturally, I think he'll see more looks in the red zone than last year.
And let's not forget, the Bears lost Fuller in free agency. He's now with the Broncos, so that secondary got a little bit weaker. I think you're all right. Man, it's gonna be a passing show, passing showdown on Sunday Night Football. I feel like.
I mean, if Thursday was anything to go by, then yeah.
Dude, what a great start. And and like you said, goal line work too. I'm not saying that they don't trust Henderson or Sonny Michel at the goal line, but I think they had a lot. I think McVay had a lot more. I'd say comfort getting the ball in Cam Akers' hand at the goal line. I don't know how many more opportunities Matthew Stafford's going to have even around there. I don't know about you guys, but I'm decently invested in the Rams as a whole outside of the running back position. Oh, and Tyler, did you say something about the Chiefs being 10-0 in September and Mahomes having 32 touchdowns and not throwing an interception yet?
I don't think that was me.
I'm getting feedback. Sorry, I wasn't sure what that was.
Pre-game show smack talking. I love it. All right, well let's stick with the Rams running game. Let's talk about Darrell Henderson. I have a start-sit question I want to ask you all while we're waiting for more to submit their start-sit questions. I have Darrell Henderson in my flex spot. This is a half PPR scoring league. My options on the bench are Laviska Shenault, James Conner, Marquez Callaway, or Elijah Moore. So Callaway, Moore for the Jets, Callaway for the Saints, Shenault for the Jaguars, and James Conner for the Cardinals over Darrell Henderson. If you had to give your take, let's start with you, Tyler. What do you think?
I think with that, you got a floor and a ceiling play with Darrell Henderson. He's going to get work. What kind of work it's going to be, we're not entirely sure. Is it going to be between the 20s? Is he going to get the goal line work? He's most likely going to get the passing work, unless Sonny Michel magically learned how to catch the ball. But I would stick with Darrell Henderson over all those guys and hope he gets the goal line work, because if he gets that, he's got double-digit touchdown upside this year.
How about you, Jonathan? You on board with all that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I love Shenault this week and sort of in general this year. But, yeah, I would still go with Henderson. I think Tyler I'd agree with everything you said. The other thing for this week, I believe that Bears defensive tackle Eddie Goldman is out, which obviously they've still got Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks there, but that obviously helps Henderson a little bit in that run game. I think if they are starting Dalton this week, I think the Rams will be pretty heavy favourites. I think it'll probably be it should be a positive game script for them. So yeah, I would still go with Henderson.
What about you, Nate? If you had to pick one of the other options, Shenault, Conner, Callaway, or Elijah Moore, if you had to pick one of those, all right, who would you pick?
I would go with Shenault. I really like. I like Elijah Moore's upside this week. I think Corey Davis probably gets the majority of that work, but I got to back Jonathan. I've been banging the drum a little bit on Laviska so far. The only concern with that is we don't know exactly. I'm intrigued by Jacksonville as much as probably any team coming into week one as far as just what they do, how they diversify throughout the year. Because, it could be a Marvin Jones game. Wouldn't shock anybody. It could be a DJ Chark game. Wouldn't shock anybody. It could be a James Robinson game, and it wouldn't shock anybody. We don't really know what Urban Meyer is going to do. And so as much as I think that Shenault's a fun play, I think that you have to go. And granted, you didn't give me the option of Darrell Henderson, so now I'm just
no. If you I'm just saying, devil's advocate. If you had to pick one out of those,
no.
All right, so we got one question here. Should I drop Noah Fant for Corey Davis? I already got Logan Thomas, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, Antonio Brown, and Odell Beckham. And on the waiver wire for a tight end, guys like Jonnu, Everett, and Conklin are available. Would you drop Noah Fant for Corey Davis?
Yeah, I really like Corey Davis this year. I wrote a sleeper article about him a couple of weeks ago. I think he was there was a beat reporter kind of saying that he looked like Zach Wilson's kind of safety blanket. I really like Elijah Moore this year as well, but I still think Corey Davis will be the number one there. Just Elijah Moore's a rookie. It might be he might be a little bit slower than Corey Davis at the start. I think certainly if you're in a PPR league, I think Corey Davis is a great floor option.
speaking of PPR leagues, got one question over here on Twitter. Full PPR, Damian Harris of the New England Patriots going against the Miami Dolphins, or Tyson Williams, the newly de facto starting running back for the Ravens going against the Raiders. Tyler, what are your thoughts there?
That's a tough call. You don't really know what Tyson Williams is going to do. With the lack of catching, with the lack of receptions that Damian Harris is going to get, I would take the upside shot on Tyson Williams, see what happens. It seems like they're going to give him every opportunity to earn that job. And you know what? Even if he's a passable running back, that run game in Baltimore is insane. It's an efficiency machine. You're talking about high fives and yards per carry for those good running backs. Even poor running backs could average low fives or high fours. So I'd go with Tyson Williams.
How about you, Nate? You agree?
Yeah, totally.
What? Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think Tyler hit every aspect I would have talked about.
All right, let's do a little defensive side of the ball because we like to cover both sides here. You guys, meaning Tyler and Nate, you have your game has one of the biggest over-unders of what's up, FF Junkie? Happy week one to you, Brian. You guys have one of the biggest over-unders on FanDuel for the week. Nate?
The largest, 53.
Yeah. So with that, are you concerned for the Chiefs at all in terms of the defensive adjustments they made in free agency? With bringing over Jadeveon Clowney, bringing over John Johnson, Troy Hill, on top of drafting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I know you had that stat, and we were talking about it in the pregame show. The Chiefs have never lost in September. Mahomes has never lost in September. Are you concerned at all with this passing game? I mean, we look back to last year during the playoffs, held Mahomes to 250 passing around that, and then a touchdown. Obviously, he went out with that injury towards the end of the game, which is why Chad Henne came in here. But my point is that Cleveland, with what they had last year, which was really good, was in that game, and it wasn't exactly a high-scoring affair. Do you think with the defensive additions they made that the Chiefs could be in a little bit of trouble?
I mean, I think that there's always a case to be made a little bit of trouble against Cleveland. Cleveland's built, honestly, probably one of the deepest, best rosters on both sides of the ball in football. I'm not going to ever take anything away from them. In fact, if it didn't, kill me to my core, I would say that I'm rooting for Cleveland as a whole this year. But remember, as many additions as they made defensively, the Chiefs made the additions offensively, speaking on the offensive line, to counteract that same thing. Mind you, we had two healthy starters pretty much the entire postseason, and they rotated in and out. And now we've upgraded that with an all-pro left tackle. We've added two pieces through the draft, and we've gotten two pieces back through non-COVID related departures. So am I worried? Yeah. I would be stupid to say I'm not concerned that Myles Garrett's going to put a ton of pressure on Mahomes. But I think that hopefully that's where Andy Reid has the scheme. If you think that they're not prepared for a heavy onslaught by Cleveland, I think we'd all be mistaken. I think that the over 53 is going to be tough to hit. I would take that under personally myself, but I think we all want fun, exciting games to watch. I just hope it's 47-6 Chiefs.
Before I get you off the hook here, let's talk a little bit Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah.
Look, a lot of people have negative thoughts about him in his season last year, and that's unfair because as the season went on, he got hurt, and so that's why they brought in the Le'Veons and the place fillers here and there at the position.
Mm-hmm.
When he was there, he was playing well. I mean, he wasn't maybe a first-round talent that everybody was like overhyping him to be heading into the season last year during draft time. But in terms of an RB2, I thought he was playing very well. With talk of him being involved in the passing game, are you buying that? I know Andy Reid during his time in Philadelphia, and even with Kareem Hunt when he was there with the Chiefs. I mean, they did, pass the ball to the running backs as well as feed them in the running game. Do you think Helaire takes that next step forward and kind of gives that PPR, half PPR upside at the running back position?
I mean, he's got to, right? Prolific as a pass catcher he was in college, it was shocking that he didn't. And you talk to the beat writers in KC and around the country, and I think everybody was equally shocked. I don't think anybody came in expecting him to not see the workload. And then you go back to week one of last year, and he received this heavy, touch volume on the ground. It wasn't through the air. And we started to see that, curbed just a little bit. We saw him be a little more integrated into the receiving game. And I think that he's going to be more this year. Again, like I said, the floor is pretty low for a person who came in with such high upside that if you look back, the most he had 8 targets on one occasion, then on 2 occasions, and 6 targets on 2 more. So you take some of those real bad weeks out, the 1 target games here and there, and I think a 60 reception upside is definitely in the realm of possibilities, or the range of outcomes.
All right, Tyler, before we get to your Browns analysis there, let's answer one question we got here. For full PPR flex position, Russell Gage going against the quote-unquote secondary of the Eagles, and I say quote-unquote because I don't know if they really exist outside of Darius Slay. Cortland Sutton going against the Giants, who, let's face it, the Giants have a pretty solid defense.
A great secondary.
Yeah. Or Austin Hooper, the tight end for the Browns. Yeah, there you go. I was like, is he the Falcons? Yeah. No, he went to the Browns last season. I'm thinking of Hayden Hurst. Sorry.
Right.
All right. So, Jonathan, let's go back to you. Gage, Sutton, or Hooper? Who are you flexing this week in PPR full?
This is really tough because when I saw it, I kind of immediately thought Sutton. I mean, he is coming back from injury, but the kind of reports seem to be that he's okay. I don't like it, but I'd probably still lean Sutton, mainly because with Atlanta, we don't quite know how involved someone like Kyle Pitts is going to be, and he could take all of that work that we think Russell Gage might get. So yeah, I'd probably still lean Sutton, but I'm not. Yeah, as you can probably tell, I'm not sort of 100%.
Right. No, this is a pretty good question right here. What about you, Tyler? What are your thoughts?
I agree with a lot of what Jonathan said, but I think I'd still go Russell Gage. Kyle Pitts is definitely going to get work, but he played 2 snaps in the preseason. He's still a rookie tight end, and Russell Gage is the number 2 wide receiver in that offense. It's unquestioned. I don't think I'm probably going to butcher this, but Olamide Zaccheaus is going to steal a whole lot of work from Russell Gage. And they are going to throw the ball quite a lot against that Eagles secondary that seems to be a social construct.
Okay, Nate, really quickly, who would you take here?
I'm going to go with Russell Gage, just strictly because I do think that the volume, and honestly, I think that if I'm the Giants, I'm going to most likely see the matchup of James Bradbury and Cortland Sutton. Now, shockingly enough, Hooper, I don't think is a terrible play. It surprises, I think, me going back. If you look at targets to the tight end position last year, the Browns were second in football. I mean, they targeted their tight end 30% of the time. So there's a chance that you want to get a mismatch. Hitchens is going to stop Austin Hooper? I don't see that. And so it wouldn't shock me to see him get 5 for 60 and a touchdown. And if that's the case, that's probably better than what the L3 will get. But I'm going to stick with Russell Gage. I wrote the sleeper article on him. I think that the upside, Ridley's going to get. So let's just stick with Gage and Hawk with beating around the bush.
I'm going to make this a tie because I'm sure that's exactly what Brian wants to hear. I'm going to go with Cortland Sutton. I think even though that's a bad matchup, the target volume is going to be there. I think, you look at who Denver, New York has a great secondary. I'm not, on paper, I'm not going to dispute that. But you have Judy, you have KJ Hamler, who I think is flying really under the radar for people. I think he's a great guy who can stretch the field. I think, there's a lot of hype with Judy with his pedigree last year. But Cortland Sutton, he just seems to me like a guy who's going to be like that security blanket for Teddy Bridgewater, who doesn't really like to air it out too much in the passing game. So if I had to go just based off of target volume, I'd go Cortland Sutton, even though it would be a difficult matchup. I do like Gage, though, second, because he had 100 targets last year, over 100 targets last year with Julio being out as the number 2 wide receiver. But again, Jonathan, you bring up a good point. We don't know what to expect in this new offense with Arthur Smith coming over from the Titans. Not to mention, this game I don't think is going to be really quote-unquote competitive. So is there going to be a need to air it out as much versus Philadelphia versus just kind of like running the clock out with, Mike Davis here, who is another guy who's potentially under the radar. So hopefully that gave you some insight, Brian, or
Yeah,
maybe it just
exactly.
confused you a little bit more.
I'm sure we helped.
But at least hopefully our logic there was okay.
And we'll see at the end. We'll see who he chooses because that's Sophie's choice. Which one of your friends do you like the best? Pitch it, Brian. And we'll know. Who do you trust the most?
Or more importantly, who do you feel comfortable roasting the most on social media? It's fine.
There you go.
However you want to go about it. But let's go back to that Chiefs-Browns game because it has the highest over-under for the week. Tyler, Odell Beckham Jr. Last I saw, game time decision. I don't know if they have officially activated him for week 1. If he's there starting, would you feel more comfortable starting him in your wide receiver 2 and or flex spot, or a guy like Jarvis Landry, who Baker did show a lot of rapport with? Granted, OBJ was out, but he's been showing a lot of rapport over his time there in Cleveland with whoever the quarterback's been.
Yeah. Help me out here, Nate. Is Honey Badger playing?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, he's able to play. There's no reason that he wouldn't play. He's officially off that COVID restriction.
Okay. All right. So they are going to wait until like 90 minutes before game time to decide on OBJ. I'm pretty confident he's going to play. I don't know what kind of volume he's going to get. I think that team is getting more and more comfortable with giving Donovan Peoples-Jones significant snaps and significant play time. So they might try to ease him in off of that ACL injury. So this week, I would probably go Jarvis Landry if I had to choose between them. Juice has been one of the more underrated fantasy and real-life wide receivers in the NFL for years. And he has a rapport with Baker that Odell simply does not. And he won't until I see it.
We just got this question from Trevor Walls on Twitter. Full PPR. Darrell Henderson going against Chicago. Edmonds going against the Titans, which is the second highest over-under for today. Or Damian Harris versus the Dolphins, which is one of the lowest. He needs just one. Who do you guys recommend? We'll start with Nate this time.
He says full point?
Full point. That's right.
So I would lean towards Chase Edmonds simply because I think that Tennessee gets – I don't think Arizona can stop Tennessee's passing game, personally. And I know it sounds like that's an odd approach to take with Tennessee is to go straight to their passing attack. But I think that's where Arizona's most vulnerable is for them to get up early. And if that's the case, then Chase Edmonds is going to be on the field that second half as they're playing. I don't want to say catch up, but if they're going to have to try to keep pace with the Titans offense, I could see, 5, 6, 7 receptions out of Chase Edmonds, which just is that consistent for, especially against Damian Harris and Darrell Henderson, who we both know are exactly prolific pass catchers.
Jonathan, do you agree with that, or you have a different take?
I completely agree. Edmonds is someone that I highlighted in the running back matchup article as someone that I'm quite interested in this week. I mean, between him and Henderson, I don't think there's really a lot between it. You did say it was full PPR.
That is correct. Yep.
So I would probably slip Damian Harris down slightly below those two. I mean, Edmonds, as Nate mentioned, has that kind of PPR upside. He had 5 or more targets in 8 games last season. So he's someone that I'm really interested in this week if it is as high scoring as we expect.
Yeah, I'm on board here. I agree, especially in the full PPR. Last I checked, James White is still the pass catching back in New England. I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I agree with Edmonds, then Henderson, then Harris. Just really quickly, Tyler, are you on board with that? Edmonds, Henderson, Harris, or are you flipping somebody?
Edmonds is an easy call for me. I know they have Connor there, but I want to see it. I want to see his usage first because they didn't pay him jack. So, Edmonds, easy call for me.
All right, well, speaking of didn't pay him jack, let's go to that matchup, the Cardinals and the Titans. I kind of was banging the drum this offseason on I guess I shouldn't say banging the drum. I guess I was pretty optimistic. I don't want to use the word bullish because everybody says bullish and it drives me crazy that they just can't find another word to say what that means. But I was pretty optimistic about James Conner. Yeah, he didn't really perform that well last year in Pittsburgh. I mean, it wasn't horrible. At least he was healthy, which is kind of a thing that people kind of confuse with him. Yes, he had a couple injuries a couple seasons ago, but for the most part, he did stay on the field a good decent amount of the time last year in Pittsburgh. Coming over to Arizona, this high-scoring offense, potentially on paper. Rondale Moore, that's the right Moore that's in Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins. No Dan Arnold. I know that's a heartbreaker to you, Nate, and a couple of your friends there.
No tight end.
Yeah. AJ Green, which if he can even be 70% of what he used to be, that could potentially be something. I'm not too optimistic about that, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. And we go back to this defense. They bring in Bud Dupree. He's a good edge rusher coming out of Pittsburgh. I think he had a torn ACL last year, so that's why he's coming off of. That's why I'm kind of hesitant on Bud Dupree. But I think if he comes back healthy to what he was, you're going to see a lot of IDP managers scrambling to their waiver wire if they did not pick him up already. But going back to James Conner, if they're going to try and slow down this Titans passing attack or this offense, I mean, they kind of have to feature Conner to a certain degree just to keep the Titans off the field. Is that logic that I should be, if I'm the Conner manager and I have him on my roster, should I insert him for that logic alone, Nate? Or do you think it's kind of not as...
I mean, use game script dependent. I think that's the reason I picked Edmonds in this matchup, is if I thought that they were going to get out to an early lead, I could see Conner completely take advantage of the majority of the snaps. And then obviously we're trying to predict early season production from this defense from Arizona, which I think is much improved even. I mean, you add in Zaven Collins and another year with Isaiah Simmons, and you have this pass rush that's more than capable. You add J.J. Watt to the mix, and we don't know. I could be way wrong. There's a chance that Arizona takes control of this game early on and never lets go, and then all of a sudden I think it could be a Conner game. But you have to go with, when you're trying to make a prediction or gut call, you have to kind of you see how the game unfolds in your mind, and then you put your rankings based upon that.
So news just came across the waiver, not the waivers, news just came across my phone that Zach Moss is inactive for today's game, meaning Devin Singletary and Matt Breida are your running backs. Ugh, no, thank you.
I hate Zach Moss.
He really is not a fan. There's a lot of disdain that comes across from this guy. You really shouldn't have a reason to hate him at all, other than the fact that he was high on Singletary. But I mean, the anger I feel coming all the way from Missouri is ridiculous. It's hilarious.
So Singletary moves up into the RB. I'm going to say 32, 33.
Oh, I was just jumping 3. The RB
3 spot. So he moved to 41. I'm going to move him into that 30. I'm going to put him right next to James Conner. How's that sound? There's that for you. I'm going to put him above James Conner.
Which, by the way, I know you all are getting ready to set your lineups, and we're an hour and a half from kickoff for the 1 o'clock games or 12 o'clock games or whatever o'clock games there are everywhere
Jonathan,
else.
Yeah, what time is it?
What time is it? What time do games kick off for you, Jonathan?
It's 6 o'clock. Yeah, so it's half 4 now. So yeah, but it's quite a nice time. It's Sunday evening. You're probably not doing anything, so you just kind of sit down with a beer. So yeah, so it's 6 o'clock and then 9 o'clock, and then obviously the primetime games are, you're taking a day off. the next day off, you've got to be really dedicated to be able to watch those. So
let me ask you a question, because I have no idea how it's like over in the UK. But for a lot of people here in the States, your typical day is a 9 to 5. We use that expression 9 to 5 all the time when it comes to the work day. Is that kind of what it is over there, or is it more typical to go in later during the day, therefore you could have the option of staying up late and watching these games, or is it more or less the same as here?
I mean, obviously with people kind of working from home a lot more over the last year, I think you'll probably get a lot more people working from home the next day. I know that's something that I'll probably end up doing quite a bit this year. Hope my bosses aren't watching. But yeah, there is a little bit more flexibility, but generally people will just kind of take the next day off and then and just stay up late.
I'm pretty sure I was
going to say it's quite funny for people in the UK when they see kind of people on the East Coast like complaining a little bit about how late certain games finish. And it's like,
late.
come on.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure one of my bosses is watching, and yes, I know I have to be at work at 6 a.m. in the morning. But anyhow, we will see how that works out. Obviously, I'll have to. Sticking with the Cardinals and Titans, Julio Jones, he's there. Is Julio a solid wide receiver 2 upside matchup this week? Obviously, Nate, you mentioned that the secondary is not exactly great for the Titans. They signed Malcolm Butler, but then he decided to retire due to personal reasons. I mean, Budda Baker can't be everywhere on the field, covering everybody and at the free safety position. Is this a Julio, welcome to Tennessee, you're about to go off type of game, Nate?
I think both. I think Julio and A.J. Brown both will have put up, I don't know, give a touchdown to both, but I think, a 16-point performance from each is doable.
What about you, Tyler? Are you on board with that?
Oh, yeah. I like it. I like Julio today. The lack of secondary in Arizona makes me feel a little bit better about it, even with some of the new adjustments to a new offense in Tennessee. Yeah, I mean, you can only adjust so much when you have Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, so they'll be all right.
Right.
Let's go to Fox's NFL game of the day or game of the week or whatever expression it is. Green Bay at New Orleans, or is it? Yeah, it's Green Bay at New Orleans, but in Jacksonville.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers, he misses all of the offseason. He shows up for training camp. I guess we can all say that he doesn't really need training camp per se. But let's go to the other positions. Aaron Jones, he gets signed to that big deal in the offseason. Devonta Adams is still there looking for his big deal next offseason. Robert Tonyan, coming off of that great year last year he had with Aaron Rodgers, all that touchdown positivity he had there. Is there anybody else on Green Bay, Jonathan, that people should be excited for, a la maybe a Randall Cobb or a Lazard? Or is it basically just Rodgers, Adams, Jones? Against the secondary.
Until I see it, MVS is probably the one that I can kind of see taking a step. He's in a contract year this year. Actually, I'm pretty sure Amari Rodgers is the only wide receiver under contract for Green Bay.
Oh wow!
Obviously they'll sign a mixture of who's sort of maybe Randall Cobb now. I'm not sure. But MVS is the one that I'm quite interested in. Obviously, his ADOT is huge. So if he can see a slight increase in target share, he could be really interesting. Reports from camp have been promising. It's just about target share, really. This week, I'd be a little bit interested in MVS because if you look at the Saints, they are really struggling at cornerback this week. I mean, they traded for Bradley Roby, but he's suspended. Marshall Lattimore is now questionable for the game. I'm not 100% sure if he's supposed to make it or not, but he's supposed to be limited. There is another cornerback who's supposed to be out as well, so I think they're starting their third-round rookie from this season. So I think Rodgers is going to have a big game. We know that the Saints are pretty good against the run. So the MVS is what maybe you're not starting him, but maybe in DFS he might be an interesting one.
Nate, for flipping to the Saints, Jameis Winston's the starting cornerback. Alvin Kamara is still there. Preseason hype around Marquez Callaway, but they're going against Jair Alexander, Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith.
Don't forget Kevin King. Kevin King's had it.
Well, I think Packers fans remember Kevin King chugging on that jersey to clinch it for the Buccaneers last year. But Kevin King is still there, veteran presence there in the secondary. I think they brought him back too. In a deal.
1 year, $6 million.
All right. Is this the coming out game for Jameis Winston that people are kind of hoping for? Or is this more of like, yeah?
I can't get behind that exclusively. I think, like you touched, Jair Alexander is one enough to shut down the entire left-hand side of the field. Whoever that may be, Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, whoever wants to be on that side is shut down because he's not going to follow Callaway. But you only got two sides of the field to put him on. It's either shut down side or open side. My one reason for optimism with Jameis is I wonder how the loss of David Bakhtiari is going to be for that offensive line for Green Bay. I wonder if there's a chance that they are forced to, if they're going to score as much as what we anticipate, if it's a closer game where New Orleans is actually in it and they have to, and they can stay competitive, or if they get blown out and they have to air it out. I think either way, it's Alvin Kamara, and everything else is kind of moot on New Orleans.
Yeah, I'd agree on Kamara. On the offensive line, they'll be shifting the guard Elton Jenkins, who's been unbelievable since they drafted him. He'll be going out to left tackle. So I don't think left tackle will be as much of an issue as for other teams. I think it's more in the interior that it could be a little bit more there. So they'll be starting 2 rookies. The guy that they took in the 2nd round at center.
Okay.
And then they'll be starting a guard who I think they took in the 4th round. Who look they've supposedly been good in camp. They've looked okay in the preseason, but that's camp and preseason. So yeah, no, that would be a really interesting one to watch because Bakhtiari will be out for 6 games.
6 weeks, yeah. Let's go to not ironically, but interestingly enough, San Francisco and Detroit. News just coming out right now that Trey Sermon is inactive today, which means Raheem Mostert is getting a bulk. He's getting all the carries.
Moon.
Why is Trey Sermon inactive?
Yeah, so Raheem Mostert, RB1 discussion this week, gentlemen, versus the Detroit Lions.
Yes.
I already had him as RB. I had him as RB. He was 12. I have him 12th overall with Trey Sermon being in, and I had Sermon in the top 30. Holy crap. So
rankings adjustments coming over at fantasyandframes.com very soon. Mostert, oh my gosh, this is going to be pretty crazy.
I am so glad I have Mostert in a lot of places.
Right? So definitely fire.
I'll go ahead and check my 47
let me
lineups real
log
fast.
into
And
DraftKings and FanDuel while we're all watching this, and those who are watching this do the same.
Wow.
Yeah. So then that makes me wonder. So if Mostert's going to be there, and if he's going to go off, does that kind of, lower the ceiling on guys like Debo or Ayuk or Kittle? Or do you think everybody's in play here for the 49ers, Tyler?
I don't think it lowers the ceiling on any of them. Trey Sermon being out, it just means that Mostert's going to get the work that we thought Sermon was going to get. It's not going to subtract from Debo or Ayuk or Kittle. Kittle I still think is going to be the main guy here. A lot of people are really hyped on Ayuk this year, and I don't blame them. But with how good George Kittle is, and people seem to have forgot how good he is, I don't see a huge ceiling for those other wide receivers. But yeah, man, Kittle and Mostert, let's go.
Nice. All right, let's do this guy or that guy, and let's just do it with 2 rookie quarterbacks because these are 2 guys who were drafted in the 1st round, and they're going to be starting for their respective teams. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. Mac Jones going against the Dolphins versus Zach Wilson going against the Panthers. If you had to start one, who would you pick, Jonathan?
I would say because of how good the Dolphins have been defensively in the last couple of years, I would go with Zach Wilson. I think there are probably better options than both of them in that sort of same range. But I think if I had to go with one, it would be Zach Wilson as well, because the Jets don't seem to have anyone on defense now. So I think they could have to throw.
They got, isn't Quinnen Williams back, or at least he should be, and then Marcus May. Those are
CJ Mosley's still alive.
CJ Mosley.
Is he? People have written him off.
I like CJ Mosley.
But their secondary, other than Marcus May, if you look at their cornerbacks, they could really struggle defensively this year.
The best thing I could have done is maybe get rid of Pierre Desir. That might actually be an improvement. So addition by subtraction.
Right. Let's do a little IDP right there. You just said you're okay with CJ Mosley. What are your thoughts on him and his comeback season? If he can stay healthy. I know he's had some issues the past couple seasons. Once he's 2 seasons ago. Last year, I think he sat out for COVID.
Correct. So you have to go back 2.5 years roughly, and I think that he's a bargain for where he's going. I think a 100 tackle upside or even floor almost. I hate to ever give anybody 100 tackle floor, but I think he's kind of earned it. Now, granted, we'll see how he gets his legs underneath him, but I don't think there's any question that the Jets most likely will be on defense a lot this year, unless someone believes that the Zach Wilson hype train is going to turn this team into an offensive juggernaut. It don't have to be a juggernaut. They will. I think they'll be better than they have been. I don't even think. I think again, the person we keep leaving off maybe is the lack of Adam Gase. The Jets are the addition by subtraction. The ABS Jets is that's addition. Yes, that is correct.
Nice.
They have gotten better. Thank you very much. I know letters.
All right, since we covered, all three of y'all's favorite teams, let's go to my favorite team. We got the Chargers coming to Washington. High-flying Chargers. I'm very high on Justin Herbert this year. I'll put my neck out there, and I say he finishes as the QB1 this year. But it's not really looking good week one going against Washington. If you had to, and by the way, Austin Eckler was just declared active. So he is good to go, quote unquote. You never really know with these hamstring injuries if that's going to flare up or not. Yeah. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. This is a big year for Mike Williams. He's getting moved around the offensive formation. Michael Lombardi coming over from the New Orleans Saints as the new offensive coordinator. Is this going to be a boring game, Tyler? It has one of the lowest over/under predictions with 45.5 points on the day. Is that kind of in line where your thought process is, or can the Chargers maybe overcome this tough defense for Washington that just got better at every position on the field?
No, I don't want to call it a boring game. I totally see why it's a very low over/under. I think you want to make it out of this game with a win if you're the Chargers, but to win if Chase Young and Montez Sweat don't remove Justin Herbert's head. Right. But otherwise, on the other side of the ball for the Chargers, you get Bosa, you're getting Derwin James back. That's one of the most exciting storylines of the season to me. I want to see him run around and hit some people.
Right. All right, let's go now. Let's do a different thing. We may run over a little bit on our hour just today because Jorge was not watching the clock well enough. Let's talk about some players at each position outside the top 25 that we're pretty excited about that we think you should start at their various starting positions and our flex this week. Let's start with the quarterback position. Let me start off. Speaking of the Washington football team, I'm all in on Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. I think this is a Fitzmagic game because I don't really see a lot outside of Joey Bosa. Maybe Kenneth Murray taking that next step this year at linebacker. Derwin James, yes, he is there, but I don't see a cornerback on that roster who's staying with Terry McLaurin. I think he's going to have a great game. Antonio Gibson should have a great game. Anybody disagree with Fitzpatrick? But let me put it another way. Anybody scared of Fitztragic happening this week? Nate?
No, not this week. I think I've mentioned it before, is that a little clairvoyance, and that I think by week 9 or 10, I think the football team's going to be competitive enough. And what's going to happen is I believe that they're going to see Fitztragic happen in multiple games. And at that point, they're going to turn the reins over to Tyler Heineke and say, you are a better game manager. And I think that's what we need with this defense. And he's going to finish the final 8 games for him and take them to the playoffs. Wow.
Hey, I'll take it. I'll take a playoff.
I think that at some point you get the excitement of the 3-touchdown, 365-yard game is there. Unfortunately, the close game when it's 21-14, and he turns the ball over in the third, and they end up losing that game, will eventually ruffle some feathers. And I think they like Heineke personally. Is it Heineke or Heineke?
I think it's Heineke.
Okay.
Heineke.
Yeah. Tyler, let's go with you. Who's a quarterback outside of the top? Now, I shouldn't say 25 for quarterbacks because there's not that many. Outside the top 5.
Do you like Mac Jones?
Yeah. Top 5, top 10, whatever. What's a quarterback that you feel okay with starting this week?
So it's a deeper pull, but someone that's really low on the consensus ratings is Tyrod Taylor. And I don't blame them, but you know what? If the Texans want a shot at not being the first 0-17 team in NFL history, I think this week's going to be their shot. Tyrod can still run around a little bit. He's getting older, but he has a nice floor with his legs, and he still has Brandon Cooks. They have a wide receiver. But, I'd feel confident putting him in my 2 spot in a super flex league or something like that.
What about you, Jonathan? What's a quarterback that you're interested in this week outside that range?
So Trevor Lawrence for me is kind of, in that game is probably, I mean, looking at consensus rankings, he's kind of just outside that top 12. So maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but
He's outside. He's outside.
But I think he's probably like the best streaming option this week. I think it has a chance to be it could be quite a high scoring game because neither team seem to be that good defensively. He's got plenty of weapons around him. He's looked pretty good in preseason. So yeah, he's one that I'm quite interested to watch.
Nate, what about you?
I need to dig a little bit deeper, and he's, I had Lawrence. Is Kirk Cousins. Cousins could surprisingly be someone that you could pivot to. I think we don't know what we're going to get with Cincinnati. I think there's a chance it could be a shootout a little bit. And if you go from like week 10 on last year, Kirk Cousins was a QB3. So he has a QB1 upside, and he's done it for prolonged periods of time. So it's not like he can't. I think that if they had their way, it's a Dalvin Cook game, and he doesn't have to carry the load. But intriguing, all 3 of those. That's why I think quarterback is just so crazy. Each week, you just name 3 guys outside the top 12, really almost outside the top 20, that could all return QB1 value.
So one of the games I'm really excited for this week is Buffalo and Pittsburgh. Are we just going to ignore that this could potentially have a shootout type of feel? And more importantly, are we writing off Ben Roethlisberger a little bit too much? Granted, he had the off year last year, but he's got weapons. He's got receiving weapons. He's got to upgrade at the running back position. They're going to have to throw the ball the way Brian Daboll in that Bills offense is doing things. Would all three of you be okay with starting Ben Roethlisberger, or is it no, thank you? Tyler, we'll start with you.
I would be okay with it. Doesn't overly excite me. I think Trey White's going to take at least what he's going to take, likely Deontay Johnson out of the game. So you're looking at Juju and Chase Claypool. So, I would be okay with starting him. I would not have a lot of confidence in it. I'd say he's closer to QB 20 for me.
All right. Real quick, Jonathan, yay or nay?
Yeah. I kind of echo what Tyler's just said. Like, so for example, I've got a Superflex Dynasty where I'm starting Big Ben over Tua. I don't feel great about either of them this week, but yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, Big Ben.
What about you, Nate? Are you just passing? Or are you okay with Roethlisberger?
I think they're going to have to stay, keep up with Buffalo. It's not going to be a ground. Now that Zach Moss is out of the game and Devin Singletary can take over, it might be a run-heavy game with the true number 1 there.
I swear the Zach Moss hate is just permeates through the screen.
It does. I know. Feels good.
Let's go running backs outside the top 25. Start with you, Tyler. Who's somebody that people should be paying attention to this week?
We actually already talked about 2 of the guys that I have quite a bit higher than the expert consensus, Tyson Williams and Chase Edmonds. I like both of them this week. Tyson Williams is going to get that shot to keep that job, and Chase Edmonds, I don't think he's just going to be a receiving back. I think him and Connor are going to split some of that running work. So I like them both. How
about you, Jonathan? Who's a running back that you're interested in outside the top 25?
Yeah, I actually had both of those on my list as well. And, with Tyson Williams, he's this week, I think he's going to see the vast majority of the workload because the guys that they've only brought in the last week. They haven't had a chance to kind of, really get into the, into the playbook and that kind of thing. So I think for this week, I think Tyson Williams is a great chat. I also had Trey Sermon on this.
I did too.
Go on. Let's have a little nod to Teddy and say J.D. McKissick as well.
Okay.
With Curtis Samuel. Yeah. I know. Obviously,
we can't not say J.D. McKissick and not give a shout out to Teddy Ricketson.
He saw. I think he was the most targeted running back last season. I still think he's going to be heavily involved. Obviously, they're down Curtis Samuel. Those targets are going to be spread around. I think he'll still be fairly safe this season.
What about you, Nate, running back?
Like John said, I had Trey Sermon, I had Tyson Williams as my 1. I'm going to go. I think Kareem Hunt could be in line for if game script dependent is what I'm thinking. Hopefully the Browns are playing catch up. that puts Hunt on the field enough to be. It's 53 point over. Even if it's a close game the entire time, there's an easy chance to see Kareem Hunt with 6-7 targets and you throw a touchdown in there, and all of a sudden you have good RB2 value there.
Let's go wide receiver. Mine is Laviska Shenault. I think him and Trevor Lawrence I think they just light it up this week. He's currently half EPR consensus 36 over at Fantasy Pros. Tyler, who do you got outside the top 25 that you're excited about?
I actually have another Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver. I have Marvin Jones on there.
Ooh, I like it.
I like Visca. I think they're going to move him around a lot. He's going to get a lot of the closer to the line of scrimmage stuff with ETN missing the year. I think Marvin Jones is going to be that primary intermediate and down the field wide receiver for him.
Yes. Nate, who do you got at wide receiver that we should be excited about?
Excited to stretch, but dependable is it's Brandon Cooks with that team, that game right there. If you have to pick someone that has a chance to occupy 30% of a target share, you almost have to just lean that direction. Like we talked about Jacksonville, it could be a Marvin Jones game, it could be a Laviska game, it could be a Chark game. All three are good upside. It's a Brandon Cooks game, I know Nico Collins fans will tell me, and Brevin Jordan truthers but yeah, everything's Colby. See?
Colby Conway.
I knew Colby would be listening. So Brandon Cooks.
Very big on the Texans. Go figure. Jonathan, did you give a wide receiver yet? I forget if I
no. So actually, I noted down Shenault and Marvin Jones because I think they're going to be I think Jags are going to be throwing quite a bit. Devonta Smith for me is one that's really interesting this week going against the Falcons. Mm-hmm. Falcons gave the most points to wide receivers last season. I think that he kind of, when he was drafted, he immediately became the best wide receiver on that team. I actually have an interesting start sit that you guys might be able to help me with Devonta Smith and Laviska Shenault. So I need to bench one of the following four: Shenault, Corey Davis, Devonta Smith, and Jerry Jeudy. So I was kind of leaning Jeudy, but it's really tough because I would probably think it would be one of Shenault or Smith. I think the other two are probably kind of more dependable, but Shenault and Smith just have such good matchups this week.
I know.
See, for me, it's between Jeudy and Corey Davis. To be honest with you, I actually think this is going to be an Elijah Moore coming out party today for the Jets, but that's just me. I think I'd go Jeudy. I think I'd sit him just because of the defensive matchup against the Giants.
I would go. I wouldn't sit well. It wouldn't sit well with me if I don't start Jerry Jeudy with all the hype. But at the same time, I got to go with the touchdown upside. Maybe I'll agree with Jorge. Is if you look at Teddy, he's throwing he's averaging about 15 touchdowns a year. That means about one passing touchdown a game. So who's going to get it? Is it going to be Jared? Your odds are diminished. Go with that, I guess. That sucks. Sorry, Jonathan. That's a tough one, buddy.
Yeah.
Tyler, what is your thought there?
I was hoping you'd forget me.
We can go to tight ends. It's fine.
No, I like Jeudy. Like Nate said, I'd have a really hard time benching him. It's not a popular pick, but I'd probably bench Laviska. I know everyone loves him. Everyone's super hyped about him this year, but I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to tight ends outside the top 8. I know. I said in the Slack chat for this show, like everybody outside the top 25, and Nate's like, "You mean for quarterbacks and tight ends also?" I'm like, right, totally forgot about that. Okay, I'll start with mine. Johnny Smith is still around. Last time I checked, and he's currently he's just outside the top 12 at 13. No Hunter Henry, or at least is Hunter Henry out, or is he?
No, he's playing. He's good. He should be all systems go.
I think he's going to be more of the blocking tight end, and Johnny Smith is going to be that receiving option. Give me the Jonnu. They gave him the most money. I think the target share is going to go his way. You look at the wide receivers; they have Bourne, Aguilar, Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers, I guess it would
probably
be
in the opposite order. Actually,
no, exactly. Myers, I think it's going to go Myers, then Jonnu in terms of targets. Tyler, what are your thoughts for your tight end?
Well, Jonnu was pretty much the only one that jumped out at me. But what I will do is give you a dart throw play, maybe a DFS play. We were talking about Austin Hooper earlier. I really like Harrison Bryant to take over some more target share for the Browns this year. I think the Browns tight end position is going to get close to a 30+% target share between Hooper and Njoku and Bryant. And I think it's just going to come down to which one of them catches the touchdown in any given week. And I think Harrison Bryant's a really good red zone target and just a good receiver overall.
What about you, Jonathan? Who's your tight end?
I was actually going to say Austin Hooper. I think if we do see that game kind of hit towards that over under, and if OBJ is limited, then those targets are going to have to go somewhere. I think, as Nate kind of pointed out before, Hooper was a lot better than we realized last season.
All right, Nate. What about you, tight end?
So I actually had a piece of the Cleveland tight end room as well. 30% target share, you have to kind of, but I think like Tyler said, unfortunately though too, is as much of a positive as it is that they're going to be so heavily targeted. He just mentioned 3 different tight ends that could all be involved in that offense, and then it's a coin flip. So I'll go to a non-coin flip at tight end is Jared Cook. I think Jared Cook is pretty much the lone man in that. And if your prediction for Justin Herbert to eventually and be that QB1, he's got to start off with a decent matchup here. And I don't think John Bostic is really much of a difficult matchup for Jared Cook, especially in the inside the 10. And so I look for, I think Cook will score a touchdown. And I think that's all we really need out of it. Outside the tight end 1, 2, and 3, give me a touchdown. Everything else is irrelevant.
All right, let's go. Let's cover the IDPs, starting at linebacker. For me, we'll start with linebacker. Yeah. Outside the top 25 in Fantasy Pros consensus. And remember, here at Fantasy and Frames, we're doing IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring when talking about fantasy production, because that is the default scoring setting on the Sleeper app. And Nate and I, we just put out an article this morning talking about the IDP matchups of the week, and I'm just going to go straight off of one of those. Give me Bobby Okereke, LB 39, starting at middle linebacker. Darius Leonard has been nursing an injury throughout training camp. He is good to go, but how much will that play a role? The Seattle Seahawks, they committed to Chris Carson in the offseason, giving him that contract. This should still be a fairly run-heavy team, although I think the passing game is underrated, and I think, Nate, we've talked about that during the preseason shows.
Yeah.
Just because of the quarterback's coach from the Rams going and being the new offensive coordinator for the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that they're going to, keep the game on the ground, though, to a certain degree, and middle linebackers like to creep up to the line of scrimmage and go after the running backs. And I think he has high tackle upside. What about you, Nate? Who's a linebacker that you're a big fan of?
Has so many that I really liked outside here that I'll go with, I'll go with the spicier pick. I don't know how spicy it is, but I think Jerome Baker is in line for a really significant matchup here. New England, everything's across the middle. I feel like his 2 games last year, week 1, he put up 44 points or 40 points against him in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. And then later on the season, he put up 27. So both matchups that he had against New England, he seemed to, and that was right after kind of having that little lull on the season where he was getting benched and he wasn't necessarily playing significant snaps. And so he has this history with New England. Jerome Baker, that's what I'm going to go with.
All right, let's go.
Defensive line.
What's up?
Defensive line next.
Yeah, let's go do some. I'm with Chandler Jones. I know he plays that hybrid edge role, but he came off that. He's going to come off that bicep injury this year. He wanted out of Arizona, but he's still there. Look, every year that he's been playing outside of last year, I want to say for the past 4 seasons, he's been like in the top 5 in terms of sacks and double-digit sacks. I think he's probably one of the most disrespected edge rushers in all of the NFL that people just forget how good he is. Mm-hmm. I think if the Cardinals want to slow down this Titans offense, which I never thought I'd use that for. I would assume it would be the other way around, phrasing that. I think they're going to need Chandler Jones to step up. I think J.J. Watt coming over is going to kind of help free him up a little bit. So I did say J.J., not T.J., right?
You did.
J.J. Watt.
Correct.
Yeah, I think Chandler Jones is going to have a big game. He's currently at the DL 36, according to Fantasy Pros. What about you, Nate?
I'm going to go with San Francisco. I think D Ford is in line for pretty heavy out. I'd say performance in the backfield. They got to account for Bosa the entire time, and with that offensive line, they don't really know what Detroit's going to do. They've been talking about moving Penei Sewell from the right to the left side. Potentially, they're going to try to do matchups, and so will San Francisco. And so I could see Ford in that backfield for one and a half sacks on the game.
All right, let's go defensive back. Why don't you start us off with that one, Nate?
Actually, it's great. You touched on him in the article this morning as well as Tracy Walker. All throughout camp, they've been really hyping him up. The cornerback or the safety room is pretty much down to just him. Honestly, I mean, he can move all over. San Francisco allowed the most points to the safety position last year. Obviously, we know there can be changes across offensive scheming as well as defensive scheming, but I believe Tracy Walker should be all over, up at the line of scrimmage, especially if it's going to be a heavy Raheem Mostert game now with no Trey Sermon.
All right, I'm going to go with my guy Darnell Savage, who I'm a huge fan of. Jonathan, you're obviously familiar with Darnell Savage, the strong safety for the Green Bay Packers. Look, as much as he's a strong safety, he plays more like a free safety. He was really great in coverage last year. Didn't have as much production in the tackle department, but passes defense. I mean, I should say, he didn't have as much success in terms of tackle production as other strong safeties do. He still was pretty solid in the tackle department. I think if he takes that next step forward and gets closer in the box and plays more predominantly there and lets Adrian Amos play more in the secondary, that could be great for him over the course of the season. That being said, for today's game, with Jameis probably going to be airing it out to keep up with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, I think Savage's coverage skills are going to come into play really heavily, and I think he has great upside this week. All right, let's do now for this. Thank you very much for still watching. I know we're going a little bit over our time. We are going to go over some prop bets. Cooper's dad, Les, let's go. Let's go over some prop bets for a Monkey Knife Fight that we're just, we're going to go over the two games with high over-unders, 2 games with low over-unders, and we're going to be discussing fantasy points. It's easy, folks. You go over to Monkey Knife Fight, you sign up, you use the promo code FRAMES, you get 100% match up on your first deposit up to $100. So, you have potentially $200 to work with today. And let's look at the games right here. Let's go with the Cardinals and Titans. Let's, we're just going to go over more or less. We'll just go more or less, starting with Tyler. Let's go with Kyler Murray. More or less than 24.5 fantasy points.
I'm going more. I think they're going to continue to lean on his legs. I want Cliff Kingsbury to show us that he can scheme up an offense, but until I see it, I won't necessarily believe it. I think Kyler will get his numbers in the passing game, but he's going to get a lot of rushing yards.
All right, Jonathan, let's go with you now for Ryan Tannehill. More or less 22.5 fantasy points.
I'm going more for Tannehill. I think this game's going to be a bit of a shootout. So yeah, I can see that being more than 22.5.
Nate, DeAndre Hopkins more than 19.5, and of course with Monkey Knife Fight, this is with full PPR scoring. Over 19.5 today.
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I think that it's pretty heavy point total, and I think Hopkins, 30% target share is probably within the range of outcomes.
Right. I'll go with Derrick Henry. PPR, obviously that's kind of a hit there in terms of the reception upside. But look, how can you go against this guy? I mean, this guy is a monster. There, from an IDP perspective, it's kind of interesting. Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons are starting at inside linebacker. I think they could get potentially a lot of work against the running game for the Titans here. Just throwing that out there. But I think Derrick Henry will get you the 19.5. I don't think the yardage is going to be there. However, I think the yards are going to go through the receiving game, but a lot of the goal line work or the short yardage work in the red zone is going to go Derrick Henry's way. So I could definitely see over the 19.5. Tyler, will go back to you. AJ Brown, more or less than 17.5 against this Cardinals secondary.
I don't feel great about it, but I'm going to go under with the addition of Julio and the Titans being one of the only teams that can keep a shootout going on the ground with Derrick Henry. I'm going to go under.
All right, and I'm going to ask Jonathan, this is kind of a trickier question. Chase Edmonds today, more or less 12.5 PPR points.
I'm going more. We've already spoken about him about 5 times, I think.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, if it's full PPR, I'm going more.
All right, let's go to our next matchup, which surprisingly is one of the top 3 over unders for the weekend, which we have not talked about yet. The Raiders and the Ravens. I be honest with you, this is not a matchup I was like, wow, 50.5 points over under. Did not see that coming. Lamar Jackson, let's start with that. Let's start with him. More or less than 24.5 fantasy points. Nate, what are your thoughts there?
He's my QB1 for the week, so I have to take the over, or what the hell was I thinking?
Tyler, let's go with you. Derek Carr, more or less 17.5 fantasy points.
I went under on Derek Carr. The over-under doesn't necessarily say it, but with that defense in Baltimore, I can't go over on it.
Jonathan, Josh Jacobs, again, this is full PPR, more or less than 12.5 fantasy points.
I'm going less for Josh Jacobs. As you just alluded to, if it's full PPR, we know that Jacobs just isn't going to get that passing work. He has also been a bit banged up recently, I believe. I think he's supposed to be okay for this game, but yeah, I'm certainly not confident. I think I'd probably rather start Tyson Williams than Jacobs in this matchup.
I'm going to go for Marquis Brown over under 12.5 PPR points. I'm going to go over. I understand Mark Andrews, who we'll get to in the next couple bets, is their primary receiving option. I think that changes last year. You look at Marquise Brown down the stretch last year. I want to say in every game from weeks 13 on, he was getting you the high double-digit or mid to high double-digit fantasy point production in half PPR. So that's only going to be higher. And full PPR, I think that continues. Not to mention who does he have to contend with targets? Sammy Watkins. I don't see that being a situation where I would be too scared of. I think the chemistry is there for Marquise Brown. The only issue was him staying on the field. I think he's going to be full go. I think you're going to see Lamar Jackson kind of prove some of the doubters wrong that, hey, he can throw the ball and not just to one target. So give me Marquise Brown with the over of 12.5 points. Let's go back to you, Tyler. Darren Waller. Now, this is not fantasy points, even though it was listed as fantasy points, but whatever. Darren Waller over or more or less 71.5 receiving yards.
More. Run it up, baby. 10 to 15 targets a week.
Yep.
Jonathan, Mark Andrews, more or less 58.5 receiving yards.
I think I'll probably go more. I think I'm probably a little bit lower on Marquis Brown than you. Obviously, Andrews has just got that huge contract. I think he'll still be the number one for Jackson.
All right, let's go on to our next matchup, which is one of the lower. Let me do it this way. One of the lower projected over-unders with 50.5. The Dolphins at the Patriots. Again, folks, for those of you who are watching, go over to monkeyknifefight.com. Use the promo code FRAMES. 100% match up to $100 this week. All right, Tua, Mac Jones. Let's start with you, Nate. Let's start with me. I'll go Tua. I'm going to go. I'm going to go under the 17.5 points. Let's think about this. The receiving game, every receiver was banged up. Gesicki was banged up, or maybe he was on COVID. This is the Patriots. This is Bill Belichick. This is Donta Hightower coming back. They brought over Matt Judon. Chase Winovich is still there. I still think this defensive pressure is going to be enough to get to Tua. And I see this more of a Myles Gaskin game than I do a passing game for Tua. I think it's going to take some time for these receiving options to really click in the passing game for the Dolphins. I just don't see it happening this week. So I'm giving you the under on 17.5 or less. That's in 17.5 with Tua. Mac Jones, more or less than 16.5.
I'm going to go more. Miami averaged about 17.5 points to the quarterback position last year. Not much different than what it is, but I believe that Mac Jones' efficiency will get him at least 2 opportunities at some red zone work.
All right, Tyler, let's go Myles Gaskin. Again, full PPR. He has shown some work in the receiving game during the preseason, as well as down the stretch last year. More or less than 13.5 fantasy points, PPR points.
I'm going to go more. He's going to get targets. Malcolm Brown and Salvon Ahmed are fine. They're place fillers. I think Gaskin's still the guy here.
Jonathan, Jacoby Myers, we mentioned him earlier. More or less than 12.5 points.
I'm going to go more here. I think he's going to be the number one option for Mac Jones. All of the reports out of camp have been really positive, and he needs to score a touchdown at some point. He can't just go the whole season without scoring a touchdown again. So yeah, I'm going over.
All right, I'll go with Jalen Waddle. I should take that back. What I was saying earlier, like I guess Waddle was the healthiest option out of all of them, out of Parker and Fuller. Fuller obviously suspended for I think this week or just a few more this week or a couple more games. Just this week.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the target volume will go there. So I want to say maybe the receptions will help get him to around this point. So I'll go more, but not by much, by like a point or a half a point. I don't know if the yardage is going to be there necessarily, but get him about 13 points, right around the 12.5. So give me more. I'm not happy about it though. Let's go back to Nate. Damian Harris, more or less 11.5 fantasy points, again in a PPR scoring setting.
I'm going to take the under there. I like Damian Harris a lot. I just don't love the matchup against the Dolphins. I think the receiving work would really help. And I don't see. I'm going to say the under. I can't justify enough other than stammering
James
through.
White's there. He's the pass catching.
Well, yeah, I know that. If he gets it, this is the touchdown question. Then does Damian Harris score a touchdown? And yes. I have to say no, and that's the reason why I'd be under.
Ramondre Vulture.
Ramondre Stevenson coming out of nowhere to take the job. Brian Ford, if you're watching, that's for you, buddy. All right, let's wrap this up with a game we had talked about earlier. And, of course, I pressed the wrong button. Here we go. Chargers at Washington in my neck of the woods. Again, folks, head over to Monkey Knife Fight. Sign up. Use the promo code FRAMES. 100% match up to $100. Justin Herbert. We'll go with you, Tyler. More or less than 20.5 fantasy points today.
I looked at these guys. I had Justin Herbert for less, and everyone else on the page I had for more. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Right. So I'm going to go more.
All right. Jonathan, Ryan Fitzpatrick, more or less than 17.5 points.
I'm going to go more. I'm going to say it's a Fitz magic game this week.
All right. Austin Eckler. I'll go with Austin Eckler, more or less than 17.5. I'm concerned about the hamstring injury. I think, Nate, you are too. So, man, against this team, this defense for Washington, I want to say he gets just under the 17.5 points. So give me less there. Let's go Tyler for Antonio Gibson.
Oh, man. I think I'm always going to go more on Antonio Gibson. I think I did everything I possibly could to get every share I could of Gibson, get him on as many rosters as possible. I love him.
Jonathan, Keenan Allen, more or less than 18.5 PPR.
I'm saying more. I mean, he saw double-digit targets in pretty much every game with Justin Herbert last year. So, yeah, I'm going more here.
And I'll round us out. If I could smash a button harder, I would. Give me the over for Terry McLaurin. Give me the over of 17.5. I think he far exceeds that. I think this is going to be a really good game for him. And so with that kind of wraps up our Four-Eyed Pregame show for week one. Sorry for going over a little bit. We will try and trim that down next week because obviously you guys want to get ready. Guys and gals want to get ready for your matchups and set your lineups if you haven't already. If you have any questions, hit us up at Fantasy and Frames on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We'll be there to answer all your questions. Obviously, you see all of our Twitter handles right here. Jonathan Klanowski, NFL, Tyler Heil, Nate Markham, Jorge B. Edwards. We'll be there right up till kickoff to help answer your questions. Head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out our rankings. We post, go through all our articles this week, which you can find on our homepage. All the links there for start and sits for the best quarterback and tight end matchups. FF Chalupa Batman, aka Zach, wrote a great article there. Jonathan, you did a great one for good RB matchups. Billy Mustafa, he wrote a great article for wide receiver matchups. And tight ends, you also did, Zach, as well. And then Nate and I just put up our IDP article today. Great matchups. So check out that over at fantasyandframes.com. And again, if you have any questions, hit us up. We're here with you. Look, we're back. We're here second year in a row for the pregame show. We're happy to be here. You will see some combination of us as the season progresses. More, sometimes less. We'll see. Depends on availability, but we're super excited. I think I can speak for all of us. Like, it's about damn time.
Yeah.
It is about time. Enjoy the games, folks. Enjoy fantasy football. Yeah, and we'll catch you next week. Have a good one, and we'll see you on Fourth and Frames on Wednesday. Recap article coming out tomorrow, and then we got waivers coming out, starts and sits, and it's just the whole thing all over again. And then, of course, we'll see you back here next Sunday. So for Jonathan, Tyler, Nate, I'm Jorge. Good luck, folks.
Go Browns.